The brilliant revelation of Richard Feynman. This instantly enhances the mind. Have you ever woken up with a spark of curiosity? An elusive feeling that there must be a simpler, deeper way to grasp the world around you? Have you ever sensed that your mind, with all its talent and promise, is only skimming the surface of what it can truly comprehend? So you're in good company. Throughout human history, the quest for clarity, real luminous clarity, has propelled sages, scientists, and creatives alike. Yet few figures have embodied that quest with as much flair, insight, and mischievous joy as Richard Feynman. Famed for his startling intellect, his irreverent wit, and his irrepressible desire to poke and prod at reality until it yielded its secrets, Feynman also carried a brilliant revelation. Something so straightforward yet so transformative that it can, quite literally, enhance your mind the instant you apply it. But what does it mean to enhance the mind instantly? We're used to believing, after all, that any real growth, intellectual or otherwise, must be a slow burn. You study, you practice, you make mistakes, and over time your skill or understanding incrementally improves. And yes, to master any domain requires real effort. Still, Feynman taught us something special. That there's a tipping point, a moment of epiphany, when confusion snaps into clarity and the mind leaps forward. That leap can happen in an instant, if and only if you invoke the right process. This process, the subject of Feynman's revelation, is not a magic pill or a new technology. Rather, it is a method, an attitude, a discipline of thought so direct that it can slice through mental fog and allow us to see clearly. Feynman wasn't just a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who helped birth quantum electrodynamics. He was also a consummate teacher, a man who believed that every human being has the right and the capacity to understand. Born in 1918 in New York City, he devoured math and science as a child, guided by his father's encouragement to question everything. That relentless curiosity propelled him through MIT, Princeton, and eventually the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos, where he helped develop the atomic bomb. But even in those epic times, he remained an iconoclast, picking locks for fun, pranking colleagues, and puzzling out the hidden layers of physical law with irrepressible glee. After the war, he became a legend at Caltech, where his lectures enthralled students with a sense that physics was not merely a set of formulas, but a wondrous, awe-inspiring dialogue with nature. The revelation we're about to explore emerges from Feynman's core belief about learning. That if you want to truly know something, you must test your understanding in the simplest, most direct way possible. It might sound obvious, yet look around and you'll see countless students, professionals, and even experts who can recite jargon-laden facts without truly grasping them. They know all the big words, the complicated frameworks, but get lost when asked to explain them plainly or connect them to fundamental principles. Feynman's method, often referred to as the Feynman technique, pierces that illusion of knowledge. And the moment you apply it, you feel something shift in your mind. Confusion untangles, insights click into place, and you gain a sense of mastery that wasn't there before. That is the instant where your mind, quite literally, becomes enhanced. To appreciate why Feynman's revelation is so transformative, we must first see how our brains often mislead us. Suppose you're reading an article on neuroscience. You encounter a concept such as neuroplasticity or the amygdala's role in emotional processing. The article uses sophisticated phrases, perhaps with a few references to data. You nod your head, this all seems to make sense. But does it really? If asked to explain the concept in your own words, as if to a child or someone with no background at all, could you do it with clarity and conviction? If you find yourself stumbling, reusing the article's jargon, or realizing you never quite understood how or why the amygdala does what it does, you've discovered the gap between recognition and real knowledge. Feynman's technique hunts down that gap like a bright spotlight, revealing where your illusions of understanding hide. What, then, is this technique in practical terms? Simple enough to describe. Pick an idea you want to master. Try explaining it from the ground up to someone who has no background in the subject. Maybe that someone is a friend, a child, or even just a blank piece of paper where you write down your explanation as if to a beginner. The minute you hit a snag where your explanation stops making sense, or you start relying on buzzwords you can't define, you've found a weakness in your grasp. That's gold. Because once you identify that weak spot, you can go back to your notes, your sources, or your reasoning, fill in the missing link, and then try again. Step by step, you chip away at the illusions until your explanation stands on its own, without jargon or leaps of faith. In that moment, you gain a perspective that truly belongs to you. Feynman famously said, "What I cannot create, I do not understand." The instant you can create the explanation from scratch, reconstruct it in your own words, you enhance your mind's capacity to reason, to connect, to discover. The stories of those who embraced this technique are legion. Students who once struggled to memorize dense textbooks found that they could skip rote memorization altogether if they forced themselves to restate concepts plainly and link them to more fundamental ideas. Scientists and mathematicians who rigorously tested their knowledge in this way often made breakthroughs precisely because they uncovered hidden assumptions. But it's not just for academic realms. Business people, artists, programmers, cooks, or hobbyists can use it too. The technique is universal because it hinges on a simple psychological truth. Clarity emerges from simplicity. If you cannot distill a concept into language accessible to a novice, your own mind likely hasn't yet grasped the concept in full. So how does this instantly enhance your mind? Are we exaggerating? Feynman's approach, after all, requires a bit of work. You must gather your thoughts, question your assumptions, find gaps, restudy them, and then articulate them anew. Yet the critical shift, the aha moment, happens right when you spot that first gap. It's like a thunderbolt of realization. Oh, I thought I understood this, but I guess I was fuzzy about the details. That moment, especially when followed by a quick fix, looking up a definition, checking a principle, or clarifying your reasoning, can transform the architecture of your knowledge. You let go of illusions and replace them with genuine insight. And that moment, brief though it may be, is the key to rapid mental enhancement. From that point on, you stop passively absorbing words and start actively forging your own cognitive framework. But Feynman's brilliance went beyond a mere learning hack. He also understood the spirit behind it. In his worldview, curiosity was the engine that fueled all good science, and humility was the safeguard that kept your curiosity honest. If you assume you already know something well, you won't check. You won't try explaining it plainly, and thus you'll never discover where you're shaky. But if you approach knowledge with Feynman's brand of childlike wonder, I don't know everything, so let me test what I do know. You remain open to finding new perspectives. This is intimately linked to creativity. Only when you see how ideas connect in simple ways can you tinker and experiment freely, imagining new solutions or approaches. So Feynman's technique not only clarifies existing knowledge, it also primes your mind for breakthroughs yet to come. Now, let's take a step back and consider how you might apply this technique in everyday life. Imagine you're learning a new programming language. You manage to follow some tutorials, read some code, and replicate certain tasks. But do you truly understand the language? Feynman would say, try explaining the core concepts, variables, functions, data structures, clearly enough that a beginner or your non-tech-savvy friend could catch the gist without confusion. Where do you stumble? That's your next area to reinforce. Or suppose you're reading about nutrition and come across the concept of macronutrients. You feel you get it: carbs, proteins, and fats. But if challenged to explain why proteins are crucial for tissue repair, or how different fats affect the body, you might realize your knowledge is partial at best. That's the time to dig in, refine, retell. The mere act of re-explaining draws your mind from a diffuse acceptance of facts to a crisp, interconnected understanding. At this juncture, let me pose our first question for you to answer in the comments. Dear reader, think of a topic or skill you believe you've mastered, something you're confident about, whether it's playing the guitar, cooking pasta, understanding a scientific concept, or excelling at certain software. Could you explain its essence in plain language to a curious novice without skipping any crucial steps? If you sense you might stumble, that's fantastic news. It means you've found exactly where Feynman's approach can help you. By pinpointing the precise gap between familiarity and true understanding, you're poised to make an immediate leap forward. One of the remarkable facets of Feynman's technique is its synergy with memory formation. We often assume memory is about repetition. Recite flashcards, go over notes, reread chapters. But cognitive psychologists have shown that effortful retrieval cements knowledge far more effectively. When you attempt to reconstruct an explanation from memory, especially in your own words, you force your brain to retrieve and synthesize information actively. This active retrieval weaves neural pathways more robustly than passive exposure ever could. So ironically, the best way to memorize a concept isn't to keep reviewing it, but to test your ability to teach it. Feynman's method harnesses that principle elegantly. It's crucial to highlight that simplicity in explanation does not equate to dumbing down. Some might fear that reducing complexity to basic language strips away nuance or leaves out important details. But in Feynman's world, simplicity is an entryway. If you truly understand a concept, you can present its core in a way that doesn't rely on obscure lingo. Then, if needed, you can reintroduce complexity gradually. Indeed, one of Feynman's signature teaching styles was to start with a simple conceptual framework and then layer on intricacies, ensuring that each layer rested on a foundation of real clarity. He believed that advanced knowledge is simply the accumulation of many simple steps. If you can't see how they link up, you're missing the actual structure of the subject. The proof of mastery is the ability to pivot between a child's eye explanation and a sophisticated, detail-rich discussion. But what about those times when we confront something truly complicated, like advanced quantum mechanics, intricate economic models, or emergent phenomena in biology, where even experts disagree on the fundamentals? Feynman wouldn't claim that everything is instantly comprehensible in every detail. Rather, he'd encourage you to find the chunk you can anchor in something simpler, something you do grasp deeply. Even if you can't unify all the complexities, you can build your understanding from that anchor outward, slowly integrating more advanced aspects. He'd also remind you that acknowledging the limits of your understanding is itself a form of clarity. If you can say, "I understand part A clearly, but part B remains fuzzy," you've already separated the known from the unknown. That, in turn, helps direct your study more efficiently than if you let a vague cloud of confusion persist. Here we encounter an idea that was dear to Feynman, the difference between doubt and wisdom. Too many learners fear admitting they don't understand. Perhaps they worry about seeming ignorant, or they're attached to a self-image of being well-informed. So they glide over the murky spots and cling to the illusions of knowledge. Feynman found this approach toxic. He revered honesty, intellectual honesty above all. If you're honest about what you do and don't know, you can make genuine progress. If you pretend, you'll remain stuck, no matter how many certificates or advanced degrees you collect. This principle, simple as it is, also instantly enhances the mind. The moment you let go of the pretense and say, "Okay, let's see if I can truly explain this," your mind stands on firmer ground. You become an active investigator, not a passive repository of half-digested information. Another dimension of Feynman's revelation is playful curiosity. He was a trickster in spirit, cracking safes, playing bongo drums, doodling in notebooks. This sense of play matters because learning can become dreary if it's only about plugging holes in your knowledge. Feynman approached the entire enterprise of inquiry like a game. How can I figure this out? Where is the puzzle? What if I poke it this way? In that sense, the technique of explaining simply is also a game. It's a puzzle to see if you can unravel complexity into neat threads of logic. This game can feel exhilarating. The instant that your mind leaps to a new vantage point can be as thrilling as solving a riddle or winning a puzzle contest. And that emotional reward further ingrains the clarity you achieve. Picture, for instance, the sense of triumph you'd feel if you could convincingly explain the basics of special relativity to a bright teenager. Or if you could clarify the mechanism behind certain illusions in a psychology experiment so that a friend says, "Aha, I get it now." That moment of shared understanding is a jolt of satisfaction, reinforcing your confidence and fueling you to explore more advanced topics. Through these interactions, we catch glimpses of how knowledge fosters connection, another aspect dear to Feynman's heart. He championed the spread of science not just to create more scientists, but to cultivate a society of people who think critically, question assumptions, and find delight in the universe's intricacies. Now, let me pose our second question for you to consider in the comments. What is one concept from any domain, science, art, technology, cooking, psychology, etc., that you'd like to test your understanding of using Feynman's method? And what steps will you take to identify and fill your knowledge gaps? If you answer wholeheartedly, you'll be taking a direct step toward that instant mental enhancement we've been discussing. Simply deciding on a concept and planning how to rewrite or re-explain it sets your mind into motion. You become an active agent in your own learning, rather than a passive consumer of facts. This mindset shift is the essence of Feynman's revelation. We must also talk about the potential pitfalls. For one, some folks become enamored of surface-level simplicity, striving to reduce everything to pop explanations that gloss over complexities. Feynman's method does not advocate superficial oversimplifications. Rather, it insists that clarity at the basic level be genuine, grounded in an actual chain of reasoning. Another pitfall is frustration. You may find more gaps than you expected, leading you to question your competence. Feynman would likely say, "Good, that means you've discovered a frontier." Identifying ignorance is a victory, not a defeat, because it shows you where to focus your curiosity next. The path of knowledge is never linear. Embracing that truth fosters resilience and humility. Let's take a moment to bring in a bit of Feynman lore, a story that captures his ethos. Legend has it that when he was a graduate student, he'd go to the math library, pick out a random journal article, and try to understand it thoroughly enough to read, and simplify it. He didn't necessarily have a reason for reading that article, nor did it always align with his direct research interests. But by forcing himself to restate the arguments in more fundamental terms, he found new ways to approach mathematics, new problem-solving strategies, and new insights that later served him well in physics. That openness to random exploration, combined with disciplined simplification, exemplifies how Feynman's mind leaped beyond standard bounds. He turned knowledge into an adventure, not a chore. In our modern era, where the internet unleashes endless information, Feynman's approach grows ever more relevant. Scrolling through daily feeds, we might glean 100 scattered facts, from quantum computing breakthroughs to historical anecdotes, to health tips, to political analyses. Yet it's all too easy to become a collector of trivia, proud of how many headlines we've consumed, without truly deepening our understanding. The solution: pick something that resonates with you. Turn off the stream of distractions. Attempt to rewrite that subject in the simplest terms, as if your grandmother or your younger sibling or a curious friend had asked, "So how does this actually work?" The instant you stumble, you'll know exactly what to Google or read next. There's no more guesswork, no more aimless scanning. You're now a detective, seeking precisely the clue that will fill your knowledge gap. We can see how this fosters a sense of empowerment in learning. Instead of letting experts or complicated texts intimidate us, we seize the initiative. It becomes an active process. Gather a piece of knowledge, recheck it in simpler language, identify holes, fill them, repeat. Over time, that cycle can yield mastery in almost any domain, albeit mastery that's always open to further refinement. This is also where the instant aspect stands out. You don't need to wait months or years to see improvement. Each time you clarify a single concept that was previously fuzzy, your mind steps up a notch. That's an immediate payoff, fueling the next cycle of curiosity. Let's pivot briefly to the question of creativity. Feynman's technique might seem purely analytical, explaining, checking, repeating, but creativity often blossoms most vividly when the mind is unconstrained by muddled knowledge. If you're fuzzy on fundamentals, your creative leaps might rest on shaky assumptions. But once you clarify the bedrock, you can rearrange ideas, cross-pollinate disciplines, and dream up novel applications. Indeed, some of Feynman's own breakthroughs came from bridging insights across fields, from mathematics to physics, from computing to biology. Clarity in one sphere illuminated paths in another. As your knowledge base becomes more transparent and interconnected, you'll likely notice unexpected sparks of imagination. That, too, can happen in a flash, the joy of seeing a solution or an analogy that wasn't visible a moment before. In discussing all this, we must not lose track of the central figure, Richard Feynman himself. His personality was flamboyant yet down-to-earth, irreverent but deeply humane. He detested pomp and pretense. He sought truth over formality. His famous anecdote about watching a plate wobble in the Cornell dining hall, leading to a new approach to rotating bodies, illustrates how much he delighted in everyday phenomena. That delight married perfectly with rigor. So, if we try to encapsulate the brilliant revelation that instantly enhances the mind, it's not just the technique, but the spirit in which it is used. Approach knowledge with playful seriousness or serious playfulness, and never fear the moment when you realize, I'm not sure I can articulate this. That moment is your lever for growth. Moreover, Feynman's revelation implies a responsibility. If you truly can explain something simply, you have a tool to teach others. Teaching, to Feynman, was not a chore but a moral obligation. If knowledge is wondrous, why not share it so that others, too, can experience the wonder? That act of teaching in plain language cements your own mastery while uplifting those around you. It's a virtuous cycle. Teach to learn to teach, and watch your circle of mutual inspiration grow. Feynman's legacy, after all, is not just in the theorems and solutions he authored, but in the thousands of students, colleagues, and readers whose minds he awakened to new vistas. What does this look like in practical, day-to-day terms? Let's say you pick a topic, anything from how the immune system wards off infections to how a certain guitar chord progression works. You gather your best resources, read with an eye for underlying principles, then you attempt the simple explanation. You realize you're stuck at explaining the specific role of T cells or the reason that chord resolution feels satisfying. Instead of shrugging and moving on, you note that gap. You do a targeted dive into relevant material, be it a biology textbook or a music theory reference. You return to your blank page, rewrite the explanation from scratch, and see if it flows better now. Once it does, your mind clicks. Yes, I actually get it. That's the instant you experience the flush of deeper insight. Now imagine applying that same process weekly or even daily across a range of interests. Over a year, you won't merely have collected facts, you'll have transformed how you think. There's also a psychological dimension worth discussing. Many of us, especially in the age of social media, are reluctant to appear ignorant or uncertain. Yet the Feynman approach requires candor about one's confusion. This can feel uncomfortable, but it's liberating. That single pivot, I don't know, let me see if I can figure it out, sparks a sense of genuine curiosity, a childlike willingness to explore. You discover that real knowledge is exhilarating precisely because it breaks through the facade of seeming smart. Feynman famously said, I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. This motto underscores the humility and wonder that fuel the entire method. The instant part of mind enhancement is the shift from defensive posture to inquisitive posture. Once that switch flips, you're unstoppable in your pursuit of clarity. Now consider how this method might affect fields beyond pure science. In the arts, being able to articulate an artistic concept simply helps you refine your creative choices. In business, explaining a strategy in plain language ensures your team aligns behind clear objectives. In interpersonal communication, summarizing complicated emotional dynamics or relationship challenges in straightforward terms can foster empathy and mutual understanding. Essentially, any domain that benefits from clarity, sincerity, and curiosity stands to gain from a Feynman-like approach. That's probably why his revelation resonates so broadly, decades after his passing. We should, however, caution against taking simple to mean reduced to single-sentence cliches. Complexity often hides nuance. Real understanding doesn't always distill into a neat soundbite, but a Feynman approach demands at least the attempt to express the essence in direct language. If you can do that while respecting nuance, you elevate the conversation from baffling complexities to accessible intricacies. That's a hallmark of brilliant communicators. They invite others into the labyrinth, one step at a time, ensuring no one stumbles in the dark. By now, we've circled the essence of Feynman's revelation from many angles. The technique, teaching/rewriting in plain language, the mindset, curiosity plus humility, and the instant aha, recognizing and filling knowledge gaps. Let's conclude by emphasizing the real treasure. Once you adopt this process, you become the kind of learner and person who can adapt to an ever-changing world. Instead of clinging to credentials or memorized statements, you question, explore, rephrase, test, and refine. In a time of rapid technological shifts, controversies over misinformation, and the unstoppable flow of data, that self-directed clarity is precious. You don't drown in the overload. You refine your ability to parse out what's truly known, what's uncertain, and how to approach the unknown. That was Feynman's superpower, and it can be yours as well. To tie it all back, the big promise was that this instantly enhances the mind. After this lengthy exploration, you can see how the enhancement is indeed instantaneous whenever you dare to pinpoint confusion and resolve it. The growth in your knowledge might be incremental, but the mental shift, going from a haze to sudden clarity, happens right away. It's like flipping on a light switch in a dark room. You can do it at any time, in any place, for any subject that intrigues or vexes you. The challenge is to remember that the switch is there and to cultivate the habit of flipping it. Perhaps the final question for all of us, then, is will we apply it? Knowledge is useless unless practiced. So we circle back to that moment of personal responsibility. Are you prepared to pick a concept, maybe this very day, and try explaining it in your own words? Will you face the revelation that you might not have known it as well as you thought? And if so, will you relish that moment, fill the gap, and leap forward? If you answer yes, then you're already living Feynman's legacy, stepping into a realm where your mind can sparkle with new possibilities at every turn. Let that be our parting note. The cosmos of thought is boundless, and each of us has the capacity to illuminate a tiny sector of it with genuine, radiant understanding. As Feynman might say with a grin, we are at the very beginning of time for the human race. It is not unreasonable that we grapple with problems. But there are tens of thousands of years in the future. Our responsibility is to do what we can, learn what we can, improve the solutions, and pass them on. May we embrace that responsibility in our individual journeys, using his brilliant revelation to catalyze our own expansions of mind, one moment of clarity at a time.